As voters head to the polls on Tuesday, and the economy and inflation are the main things that are driving their votes. An ABC News Ipsos poll taken this past week shows that 49% of Americans list the economy or inflation as the top issue when it comes to voting. Now, they also say that 14% of abortion respondents are also saying that that is one of the things that they're looking at right now. So that's a big difference between where people say their interests are and what the experts had been thinking that the importance was going to be. We want to welcome in Brian Kelly this morning. Obviously, he is the editorial director and familiar face of this program, executive vice president of U.S. News and World Report. Let's get into this, Brian. Yeah. Back in the spring, when this Supreme Court ruling came down, Democrats came out and said, and we heard the president saying it just in the last 24 hours, that women's health care is on the ballot, abortion is on the ballot. It doesn't seem to be on the minds of these people that are responding to these polls, though. So did Democrats misread the importance of this when it comes to elections?
I think you have to say yes. I mean, even if you go back to the spring, the Democrats were holding a pretty weak hand on so many levels. And the Dobbs decision came out, and suddenly they had an issue. They had one horse to ride. And I think, you see a lot of Democratic pollsters saying they wrote it too hard. They really, people like Bernie Sanders looking at it saying, you guys are getting this all wrong. There's a lot of kitchen table issues that folks are always going to go to first. And I think that's where we are today.
So as they move into this election right now, they have said that that was going to be a main driver of their voters. But it turns out what's really driving voters right now is not women's health care and abortion, it's the economy. And I know this sounds like a broken record when we talk about all this time, but you've identified this as a new voting bloc that we haven't talked about as much, in particular regards to women voters.
Right. Yeah, it's funny. We talked about years past, it was the soccer moms that were key to the election. And I was saying, I think these are the supermarket moms. These are white women, suburban voters who went for Biden the last time. And there's a huge shift, particularly almost recently, a huge shift towards Republicans. That's a key constituency. But these are people who go into the grocery store and look at the price of chicken, and they are not happy. And they go to the gas station and they look at the price of gas. And that is being blamed on the Democrats, sometimes fairly, sometimes unfairly, but there's no question people are blaming them.
And is that because of the inescapability of it? Look, you can have a debate with somebody over an issue like health care and abortion, but you'll have that debate and then you'll move on with the rest of your life. The difference, I think, with the inflation question is it never really leaves your day. It's waiting for you at the supermarket. It's waiting for you at the coffee shop. It's waiting for you at the gas pump. In some ways, it's almost inescapable.
Yeah, it is, and it's it's forcing you to change your lifestyle. And I think one of the key points, Tom, is they are blaming the Democrats in a fairly sophisticated way, because they're saying, inflation is complicated, it's global, but the Democrats put spending on the table that people look back and say we shouldn't have spent all that money after COVID. We had a lot of spending, was $2 trillion too much. They look at gas prices and they say that Biden's energy policies are to not drill oil in the U.S. and yet we're going asking the Saudis for oil. So they see through some of the Democrats, and the Democrats have no response to that.
But the president, when he makes these public statements about saying that the economy is strong, that the economy is heading in the right direction, there does seem to be a verbal disconnect between politically what they're saying at the White House and the reality of a lot of people's lives.
Very much so. I mean, there are aspects of the economy that's strong. You have to give in that. There's jobs are still being created. It's a strange economy in some ways, but a significant number of people are not benefiting from it. And that's what I think you're going to see at the polls on Tuesday.
So have Republicans taken advantage of that by proposing their own solutions to these problems? Or are they just kind of hanging back and let the Democrats kind of twist in the wind on this inflation thing that is wrapped around their legs right now?
To a great extent, they're doing nothing. I mean, they're just pointing to the problem. It's the art of war, the Chinese manual. When your enemy is destroying himself, let him, leave him alone. I mean, there's some of that going on here. The Republicans are not putting anything specific forward, but they're pointing to this basket of problems. And, it gets deeper. You've got immigration, you've got crime. So the Democrats really have painted themselves in a pretty difficult corner right now.
So as we move past Tuesday, and widely a lot of people assume that the Republicans have a really good shot at taking the House, not maybe it's much a slam dunk in the Senate, but If the Republicans do take control of the House, how does this change this presidency? Because we've seen other Democratic presidents lose majorities in both houses and then set themselves up for re-election in 2 years.
Well, interesting. You know, Tom, certainly I go back to 1994 when Clinton got his clock cleaned, and after the first 2 years, and he came back and said, let's make some deals. And you got some pretty progressive, you know, the balanced budget amendment, welfare reform. There was a lot of bipartisanship on the Hill. Obama, by his own admission, got shellacked in 2010, but there was no mood to make deals. So I don't know, is it a deal climate or not? That's the question you have to ask on Wednesday, because I agree with you, the Republicans are taking the House for sure.
Of course, that might have been easier back in the Clinton days, because deal and negotiation is viewed as a dirty word in some areas of both parts of these parties.
Yeah.
We have to wrap it up. Brian Keller from U.S. News and World Report.